Yeah, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do 2 more minutes of this. We're just gonna go ahead and switch over. Hey guys, what's up? Good to see you. Listen. I don't think I've ever been more nervous about getting in front of a camera because all this is one take. There will be no editing. This will all be one take and it'll be straight off the dome, which I'm happy that you guys are here to help me remember what's happened. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got like the journal, but I'll be completely honest with you, I haven't wrote in it in a hot second. I've just been going off of pure memory. All right, so the last time I wrote in this journal was when you guys got that fucking horse. Okay? There's been so much tomfoolery, it's not even funny. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get this started. This is the D&D 5e campaign recap for the current campaign that is ongoing at my table currently with 9 players. Fucking 9. The largest campaign group that I've had so far. I think the last one was 5 or 6, depending on whoever showed up. So this is definitely the biggest group that I've had so far. So this will essentially be a recap of the first session to the current session. First things first, let me go ahead and set up the setting, the world that my players have been playing in. So several thousand years ago, there was a war between all divine beings. There was a split to where essentially some gods had wanted absolute control over all creation, and other gods wanted to give them free will, and essentially split the gods kind of down the middle, where there was essentially good gods, bad gods. Well, the gods who took up the mantle of the good gods, they chose 6 of their strongest divine beings, which, if you'll give me a moment, let's see which ones those were. I don't have them memorized by heart. All right. So essentially, the 6 strongest gods that were chosen amongst them were Avandra, Bahamut, Iyun, Moradin, Pelor, and Arathis. They were the 6 chosen gods to do battle with the betrayer gods. And unfortunately, even their power themselves were not enough, and they had to enlist the help of a very special group of mortals who assisted them in defeating the betrayer gods. Spoiler alert, that was the players from my first campaign. And a small list of the betrayer gods whose worship in this world have been banned is Asmodeus, the god of tyranny, Grumsh, the god of destruction, Lolth, the god of spiders and lies, Torog, the god of the Underdark, Vecna, the god of secrets, Zahir, the god of darkness and poison, Tiamat, the goddess of wealth, greed, and vengeance, and Tharizdun, the god of madness. So, thousands of years ago, there was a fight between these 2, and they had split. And at the very end of the war, after the betrayer gods were defeated, Avandra used a vast majority of her divine power, her divine essence, to seal away Asmodeus, who was the one leading the charge against the Chosen 6, kind of the head of the betrayer gods, so to speak, and sealed him away in a sphere, which kept him in prison for a while. And after that point, they had separated, the gods had stayed pretty much out of mortal affairs, kind of dabbling and, intervening intermittently, kind of giving certain mortals, divine power if they had enough faith, like gods do. In the events of the first campaign, Asmodeus just happened to be released. There was some time travel that went on, and the campaign members at the time were those mortals that kind of went back in time and assisted the gods in defeating the betrayer gods at the time. And they traveled back to their own time with divine essence to help them defeat Asmodeus again. Kind of a, weirdly enough, kind of very similar to Elder Scrolls Oblivion. But this takes place about 200 years after the events of that campaign. The betrayer gods have been defeated, and the chosen six and all the other quote-unquote good gods haven't been heard from in quite some time. The only remnants of divine intervention that is left are paladins and clerics. Most gods do not intervene in mortal affairs anymore, and they haven't for some time, especially for those past 200 years. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in, Jamie. What's up, bro? What's up, brother? So, this campaign takes place on a continent known as Hyleria. And if you know Hyleria and you know where that reference is from, we can be friends. Also, a disclaimer: any relation to people, places, things, or events is purely coincidental. Purely coincidental. That's good, man. There's not going to be much visual thing here. You don't have to watch. You can just listen. So, this takes place on a small little continent known as Hyleria. In the land of Hyleria, over the past 200 years, since the gods have disappeared, the most powerful element has now become magic. Arcane magic, not divine. For divine magic is spread very thin. And I believe, the continent was split into two different provinces. It was split into, you could say, the East and West provinces. So you have the Kingdom of Cardine and the Aetheran province. These two provinces was in a pretty violent war for about 150 years. And these past 50 years, they have been in a route, like a very ice-thin point of peace. It's very, very... There's a very thin line right now between peace and war with these two. And unfortunately, there was a city that sat right on the dividing line of the provinces, known as Aedoran. That city was asked both by the capital city of Kincardine, of the province of Cardine, and Aetheran, the capital city of Aetheran, to join one political side or another. However, Aedoran decided to be neutral. Aedoran was also a place free from any racial discrimination, any religious discrimination. It was a kind of a cultural mixing pot of arcane magics, various races. It was kind of a place that you could go to be free from any type of prejudice. But unfortunately, supposedly, rumored, due to their political neutrality, the city was destroyed in a series of violent explosions that some believe were done by one of the major cities. either Aethland or Kincardine for refusing to join their side in the war. So, that city was wiped off the map. And over the course of the last 50 years, the survivors of that city and other people who also wish to seek refuge from the barbaric war that takes place in these regions, they decided to rebuild the city and through magical enchantments lift the city from the earth, carrying a huge chunk of rock and stone and the earth below with it, and levitate it into the sky, and is now what's known as New Azra, a floating city, a floating cityscape in the sky that is free from the war-torn politics of the world below. They separated themselves and sectioned themselves off. That way they could practice their arcane and druidic magics without any interference and without any political affiliations to one province or another. With that said, this is the point where our players begin. 200 years after the events of the last campaign and the separation and disappearances of the gods, they meet. They stroll into this little bitty town. Let me see if I can get it pulled up here. This little bitty town in the province of the Kingdom of Cardine, known as Oryx. This is where our journey takes place, in the small town of Oryx. With the upcoming Founders' Day festival, the royal family that rules Cardine, Kincardine, which just happens to be the royal family of Cardine, we're having a Founding Day festival. This city was founded over 450 years ago by the Cardine family and has been under Cardine rule ever since. So the players who were looking for work in their own respective ways were passing through the city of Oryx, the town of Oryx, my apologies. We're passing through the town of Oryx and had come upon a, how would I say, a very not unfortunate, a very chance meeting. But this is why it's so hard to do it in one take, because I'm going off of memory. So, we zoom in to the little town of Oryx. These players are all passing through for their own business, whether it's to look for gold or to look for adventure. But we zoom in on a little tavern known as the Rusted Sword, where we have two players sitting at the bar. Two rogues, one a changeling rogue known as Ruse, and a fairy rogue known as Zephyr, that have an affiliation with a certain organization known as the Changing Hands. Kind of a thieves guild type organization. They are sitting at the bar drinking when they notice come through the door three other individuals. A large 7.5 foot tall female Goliath known as Alveria. A about 7.5 foot tall Minotaur paladin known as Bantar. And a small, like 5'11" seemingly human sorcerer known as Spade, all traveling together. And there was a meeting between all of these, a small little conversation. They noticed another player sitting in the corner, which is a female wood elf known as Dawn, who is sitting by herself, but shortly joins the party. And they also meet a human bard named Tom Bombadil. Think of... What would be a good reference for Tom? Think of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but in a jester outfit. That's Tom Bombadil. And also traveling with, I believe traveling with Tom was a cleric of the divine being Cord. Crazier Cicero? Yeah, pretty much. So, let's go ahead and recap the players. So, yeah, Cicero mixed with Joker. Exactly. So, a recap of the players. We have Alveria, the Goliath Barbarian. We have Spade, the Azamar Sorcerer. We have Bantar, the Minotaur Paladin. We have Dawn, which is the Wood Elf Druid. Ruse, which is an Arcane Trickster Rogue, who is a Changeling. We have Zephyr, which is... There's fucking 9 of these people. Which is a Fairy Arcane Trickster Rogue. And then we have Tom Bombadil, which is a Human Bard. And then we have Soseki, which is a Warforged fighter who joins the party shortly after. And this group, who will remain unnamed for now because they have not chosen their name at this point in the campaign, we will just refer to them now as the party, because I don't need anybody coming after me for copyright infringement for the name that they chose. Not that it matters, because this shit doesn't make money anyway. But with that being said, each member of the party sits at their own table, and noticing that these other characters seem a little bit out of sorts amongst the general public, they all decide to approach each other and exchange names and objectives. And about this time, they pull a note off of a notice board, which is a nearby merchant seems to have been having a lot of his convoys attacked or go missing for some reason, and he would pay handsomely to see for any kind of information on what might be causing this. So the party takes the notice, they go talk to the merchant, and they get a little bit more information about the area in which that the shipments were going missing. So they decided that on the next day they'd set out and look for any type of clues to what was happening to this to these shipments. They decide to do a little bit of shopping, gather some materials. They all started with a little bit of gold. Oh yes, I forgot the cleric. You are 100% correct. I forgot the cleric. There was one more that I forgot, which was Thasmin Leadbeard, which was a mountain dwarf cleric who also joined the party. It's hard to do this right off the top of the dome. But they decide to go their separate ways for now and go to individual shops, the blacksmith, the Fletcher's leatherworkers, and get some materials. Tom makes explosive pies mixed with some gunpowder so they'll explode on impact. That'll come in handy later, like you'll see why. There is a lot of us and a lot going on. I will completely agree. So, as the party finishes up their resource gathering and their shopping, they see a large convoy kind of like almost like a parade moving through the center of town. And these guards that are escorting this carriage are wearing Cardinian garb, which is the colors of the royal family of this province. What they see is a very flamboyant, illustrious carriage roll through, and they see a very well-dressed, finely dressed man step out of the carriage and climb on top and announce that he is the nephew of Lord Cardine, the ruler of this province. And in celebration of the Founding Day festival that will be taking place in less than a week, they are throwing a soiree at the local tavern, the Rusted Sword, and everyone drinks for free. So, taking a little bit of interest, they decide to attend this soiree. Several drinks were had, several jokes were made. There were people playing cards, playing dice. Some of our more stealthy players decided to come down with a case of sticky fingers and steal some gold off some folks. But it is the finely dressed man reveals his name later to be Caleris Cardine, which is the nephew of Lord Cardine and his wife Anria Caleris, or Anria Cardine. So, several hours pass, the revelries take place, everyone's having a good time, and Sir Caleris decides to take his wife up to the second floor and have some drunken business. We all know the birds and the bees talk, so we're not gonna go into any detail. But he gets plastered and decides to take his wife upstairs, and they decide to have a little bit of fun. And it's at this point where some slams can be heard, some seemingly raucous lovemaking, and the guards kind of roll their eyes, and kind of as if this is a normal occurrence. But it's at this point where the players hear the smashing of a window and the sound of a woman screaming. At this point, the revelry stops, and everyone looks up the stairs as Anria, draped in nothing but a bedsheet covered in blood, comes sprinting, almost stumbling down the stairs, screaming, "They've killed him! They've killed him!" Our party, acting swiftly, dart upstairs into the wide open suite room. The largest room in the tavern, door wide open. They enter the room, and they just catch the glimpse of something dressed in all black dart out the window, and the Lord's nephew Caleris laying, unfortunately, buck naked, with several stab wounds, laying across the bed. Some of the party goes and looks out the window to see if they can see the attacker, with no avail. They see no person running, and some of them decide to investigate Caleris's body. With a high enough roll, they notice that Caleris had in his left hand, clutched tightly, a large piece of black cloth with a note wrapped up inside of it. On further inspection, they notice that the note is an indication of someone's next target. And it kind of spoke in riddles. It said, "Your next target lies within red walls that have been kissed by the serpent." Now, I should say that the previous map of the land looked... Let me see if I can get it up real fast. It may not pull it up. There it is. Okay. Let me go. 1-7. So, this is an old map. This river that runs right here is known as the Serpent River. And where this river forks, kind of like the tongue of a snake, sits the capital city of Kincardine. Now, recently, I have added this river back in. So it's lore accurate, folks. But your next target lives and resides within red walls that have been kissed by the serpent. So what that does is it gives the party a bit of a clue of who the next target is. Now, this is where the party makes a fatal, near fatal mistake. They decide to split. Zephyr releases his latched wings that he keeps in secret underneath his cloak. He rips off his cloak and unfastens his harness and releases his feathered wings, flies out the window into a very dark and overcast night where rain is just now starting to fall. Through the flashes of lightning, he can see bits of footprints in the mud and the sand that lead into a nearby market square. He flies up onto the rooftop of this kind of squared-in market where it seems that the people who reside nearby have strung up large sheets of linen to dry, but unfortunately, with the rain, they won't be drying anytime soon. So in brief flashes of lightning, he gets to see glimpses of things moving amidst this maze of soaked linen. And just as he thinks that he spots what may be this assassin, he jumps straight up into the air and takes... no need for that knowledge, true. He takes a dive straight into one of the market stalls, and unfortunately, the assassin is not there. It's about this time that Ruse, the other rogue who was in hot pursuit, and Thasmin, the cleric, is trailing not far by. Ruse decides to flank around the other side of the market and kind of come in from the opposite side and pinch. Just as Zephyr, the fairy rogue, is standing up and pulling the linens off, Ruse catches a silhouette standing behind Zephyr in the flash of lightning. He also sees the flash of a blade in that same lightning. And within an instant, Zephyr feels the knife being plunged between the spaces of his ribcage from behind. Zephyr falls to the ground, barely breathing, and it's at this point Ruse has a decision to make. The assassin flees, and though not dead, Zephyr lays there slowly bleeding out, slowly dying. Ruse decides to save his friend instead of pursuing the assassin. Thasmin, however, the cleric, catches sight of the assassin fleeing, who jumps on a nearby horse that is stabled nearby and begins to ride out of the southern gate of Oryx. And unfortunately, he is out of range of any type of spell or weapon attack. So Thasmin only, unfortunately, gets to lay eyes on the assassin before he escapes. They decide to stabilize Zephyr, offer him a bit of magical healing, take him back to the Rusted Sword Tavern where he recuperates until the next day. It's in that next day they plot their next move. They decide to go ahead and investigate the strange disappearances of this merchant's supply shipments, since it's fast coin and they need more money. So the next day, after wounds are healed, they set out south to a small patch of forest that the shipments seem to be all disappearing in. The party asks if there's any type of foul play, if he is shipping anything illegal, and he responds, no. They believe him, and they travel south. About a day and a half south, they find the wreckage of several carts that have been run off the road, and they all have the same insignia on the that have been kind of like wood burned into the back of the carriage. Now, what they were not ready for was one of the carriages had spilled over, and some of the contents were still there. One of the casks was still locked, so they decided to open it. And with a very good history check, the contents of the box just happened to be something known as Styx root. It is a dark root that grows in very kind of dark and swampy portions of the land, which, if processed in the right way, can be used as a hallucinogenic drug, or if refined with certain types of plants, can be turned into a poison, a very potent one. And it's this very dark, almost blackish maroon purple coloration. It's like a beet, but very, very, very dark in coloration. They gather the drugs. That's really the only way I can say it. They gather the drugs, and just as they are about to leave, one of the trees shifts and lurches out at them. And what you can imagine is, if you know what a spriggan is from the Elder Scrolls, it's a natural forest-dwelling beast that has like bark-like skin, easily mistakable for a tree, but very territorial. Where are the drugs going? Yeah. Where are the other drugs? God damn it! I get off track. Stop it. So they do battle with what is known as a barkling. They dispatch this barkling quite easily, but they deduce that the barkling was attacking whoever had the box of Styx root. So this must have been the cause of all of the caravans being attacked, that they deduced was the problem. So they travel another day and a half back to Oryx, and they talk back to the merchant. Marcarius Dupont is the merchant's name. They take Marcarius up to their room in the inn in the Rusted Sword. They lock the door and begin to interrogate. They say things along the lines of, I thought you weren't transporting anything illegal. And he feigned that he had no idea what they had. So they slam the box down, turn it, open it, to reveal the Styx root. He pleads with them not to turn him into the authorities. They agree under the condition that he pay them. And he says, sure, I'll pay you. Let me just go back to my house and get the rest of the money, and I'll pay you. They agree, and he slides out the door. Well, Ruse, our changeling rogue, decides to tail him a little bit, as does Zephyr, the fairy rogue. He goes out the inn window and decides to fly overhead to tail him. What they notice is that he doesn't go straight home. He goes to a group of 4 royal guards, and they can't see what he's saying, but he's speaking quickly and pointing back to them, back at the inn. So they kind of relay back in a daisy chain that they've been betrayed. Some of them decide to leave, slip out the back door of the inn as the guards are approaching. Thasmin the cleric, Zephyr the rogue, and Ruse the rogue decide to tail Marcarius to his home. They notice that the door is locked, and they pick it very swiftly. They enter his home and search it, and he's not there. But they hear a noise coming from the basement, kind of like the clanging of an iron door. They notice that the basement door is locked as well. They pick it very swiftly. They're rogues, people. They proceed down into the basement, noticing that this basement has been retrofitted into some kind of alchemical distillation workshop. The smell of Styx root is heavy in this basement. They can't stay for too long admiring the view. They are in hot pursuit of someone. At the very edge of the basement is a steel door with a large steel lock. They pick that lock quickly and race down this underground tunnel that seems to be dug as somewhat of an escape route. They're in this tunnel for what feels like about 5 minutes before they notice a beam of light coming down from the very far end of the tunnel. And that beam of light is quickly muffled by what looks to be the top of a hatch. So they rush down. They rush down the tunnel, up the ladder, out the hatch. They realize they're outside the town walls. And it's at this time they can see Marcarius, who has a bag slung over his shoulder and is throwing his leg over the saddle of a horse and is beginning to ride away. Thinking quickly, one of the rogues looses an arrow into the horse's behind and brings it down along with Marcarius. The horse doesn't die, folks. He's okay. It's fiction. The horse is fine. Marcarius, however, the horse landed on his leg and crushed it. He gets up in a frenzied state and hobbles his way into the woods with our split party closely behind. They follow him into the woods, stalking him, and eventually catching up with him. Our rogues are dashing and moving as quickly as possible, Marcarius isn't getting away. So they finally shoot Marcarius's other leg to debilitate him, and they pin him up against a tree and begin asking him questions. Who does he work for? What is this mysterious drug that they found? What does it have to do with anything? He's reluctant to tell them who he works for. He keeps saying things along the line of, they'll kill me if I say anything. It's at this point the cleric in our party decides to go a bit dark, who takes his warhammer and cracks this man, Marcarius, over the head, bringing him below 0 hit points, effectively killing him. And quickly using Spare the Dying and some healing herb that they have to bring him back up to 1 HP. So they're essentially waterboarding this guy, interrogating him for information. And this goes on for several minutes, and just as he's about to... his walls seemingly begin to break down, and he cooperates a little bit more. Before he's able to speak on who he works for, he is quickly shot in the chest with an arrow. A black arrow with black fletchings from an angle that was not one of the party members. And he falls below 0 hit points. So the cleric attempts to revive him again. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. They remove the arrow, and the arrow is all black. A black shaft, black fletchings, and an obsidian tip, covered in some kind of black, viscous, slimy liquid. And it's very similar to some of the liquid that they had seen in the distillery underneath his house. So, realizing they're not going to get anything out of this guy, they search his body and they find a note from the same people who the note on Caleris was found. So that same stamp, which is a viper with its mouth open, facing, stamped in black ink, that says your continued discretion is appreciated. But that's it. That's all it says. So they meet back up with the rest of their party members, who had a bit of an adventure of their own. That would take a while to get into. But they all meet back up with their party, and they compare the two notes, and it seems like the seal is the same. Black ink, and the stamp is the shape of a viper's head bearing its fangs. So they decide to do a history check. And it turns out that this organization is colloquially known as the Order of the Black Viper. Haha, nail on the head, right? Which is it's almost like a mythological organization of assassins. Very similar to the Dark Brotherhood from the Elder Scrolls games, in a way. Most people think of them as myth and legend, fairy tales, things to tell their kids before they go to sleep to keep them out of trouble. But they compile all their clues, and they decide that the next target must be within the city of Kincardine. Your next target resides within red walls kissed by the serpent. Well, it just so happens that the Capitol building inside of King Cardine that the Lord stays in is known as the Red Palace, with walls painted of red brick. So whoever it is must live in the Red Palace. So they decide to set out the next morning on a very treacherous 3.5, 4-day journey to Kin Cardine, the major city of the Kingdom of Cardine. After some travel blunder, some very straight line 120 mile an hour winds, causing some travel delays, they have a run-in with a griffin, a basilisk, which they flee from very quickly, and a traveling group of minstrels. They finally arrive in Kincardine. And at this point, the Founding Day Festival, which is a week-long celebration, has started. There's colorful banners hung from the rooftops to rooftops along like the lantern posts. There's bands playing music. It's very I mean, it's a festival. There's merrymaking had, there's games to be played, drinks to be drank, food to be eaten. So they decide to speak with Lord Cardine immediately to let him know that someone within his palace may be in danger. It's at this point where they meet the man himself, Lord Cardine. Lord, I believe it's... Give me one moment. Let me pull up my document here. Should have had this prepped already. Let's see. There we go. So, they get to meet the Cardine family. They meet Lord Maxim Cardine, Lady Genevieve Cardine, Princess Allura Cardine, and Prince Maximilian. And the Cardine family has ruled over the southern province for over 400 years. And it's known very much that Lord Maximilian Cardine, or Lord Maxim, rules these lands with an iron fist and is equally feared and also respected by his subjects. They decide to inform Lord Cardine that there may be an attempt on someone's life in the Red Palace. He takes their words intently. And let's see. Ruse and Zephyr also meet with one of their contacts inside the city from the changing hands. Let's see. The next day, actually no, it was later that night. So they arrive about midday. They arrive about midday in King Cardine. They approach Lord Cardine in his palace. They warn him. He takes the information with a grain of salt. Tells them to enjoy the festivities, which they do. They go out and have some fun. They play some games. He also invites them to the speech. This is at the point in the festivities where Lord Cardine gathers everyone outside in the courtyard of the Red Palace to give a speech about the lore of the Founding Day Festival, how his family founded this kingdom over 400 years ago, and they've ruled since, yada, yada, yada. And that this festival is to commemorate the lives and the strength and prosperity of the Cardine family and its province, which the players are in attendance of this speech. Out on the balcony stands 2 royal guards, Lord Maxim, his daughter, Princess Allura, his wife, Genevieve, and his son, Maximilian. The party rolls perception high enough to see that Lady Genevieve escorts Maximilian back into the palace as he's giving this speech. They also recognize and see, just out of the corner of their periphery, 2 of the guards that have been posted on the palisade have disappeared. They were pulled out of eyesight. And 2 shadowy figures dressed in all black was rotating around behind the balcony onto what seemed to be a very precariously placed statue of a gargoyle. So they're catching another assassination attempt. They decide to intervene immediately. Zephyr flies forward with his wings, and Thasmin uses the command spell to command Lord Cardine to go inside. And Zephyr flies toward the princess, grabbing her mid-flight and crashing through the large stained glass windows of the balcony back into the palace, just as the stone gargoyle slams down onto one of the guards outside onto the balcony, crushing him and splattering him all over the balcony. And it's at this point Lord Cardine knows that he was under the influence of magic. And he quite quickly rouses his guard around the person who tackled his daughter through the stained glass windows. The rest of the party rushes inside and quickly diffuses the situation. And they ask to speak with Lord Cardine alone, which he grants them that somewhat. He speaks with himself and his wife, Lady Genevieve. Lady Genevieve is giving off some very strange, energy, kind of deflecting all of their questions, being very suspicious. But Lord Cardine asks what their plans are, and they had planned, because they believed that Lord Cardine is the target of the assassination. They plan on setting up an ambush for these assassins. Lord Cardine plans to have a funeral procession for his nephew, who died but 5 days prior. And it's more of a celebration of his life, less of a funeral. So he's having a feast within the halls of the Red Palace. That is where the party decides to set up their ambush. Ruse, our arcane trickster changeling rogue, decides to take the form of the princess or Lord Cardine. I don't recall. Jay, who did Ruse take the form of? I forget. Because they deduce that it's either Lord Cardine or the princess. Because neither Lady Genevieve or Prince Maximilian was present for the assassination attempt. So they deduced, within like a coin flip, 50-50, that it was either Lord Cardine or Princess Allura. Regardless, they come up with a very intricate plan to parade themselves around like one of the royal guard. It was the princess that I went with, but both were in the plan depending on who they went after. Okay, that's what I thought. So Ruse takes the guise of the princess, and several of the party members stand near Lord Cardine, acting as his own personal guard. Before this takes place, just before they return to the palace, to the feast and the festival, Ruse gets pulled away into an alley by his changing hands contact, Anna, which is a drow, a female drow, who kind of gives him a bit of inside information on who the target really is. That she had seen someone exchange a drop point dressed in certain royal attire, who had left money in a drop point and was quickly gathered by some figures in dark robes, which gave her the impression that it was a female within the Red Palace who wore royal robes that was ordering this hit, this assassination attempt, which they deduced was Lady Genevieve. Well, the assassination attempt happens. The festival continues. And just as the assassins believe that they have a clear shot on their target, they drop their disguises as waitresses and waiters and begin their attack, which was promptly counterattacked by our party, who was in position. There was a fight with our party members and 3 assassins, one of which was able to escape after 2 of his comrades had been felled in combat. They decide to search one of the assassins and found a Cardine family encrusted ring inside of his pocket. And it just so happens that each Cardine family ring is made specifically for its wearer. And this just so happened to be Lady Genevieve's ring. After realizing this, Lord Cardine flies into a fit of rage. After learning that his wife wanted her son to take the throne and not her stepdaughter, sent Lord Cardine over the edge. Who, I know I'm leaving a bunch of stuff out, but it's kind of hard to recount from memory. But I should clear this up. Lady Genevieve is his second wife. The daughter, Princess Allura, was from a different woman. Prince Maximilian is her son, is Lady Genevieve's son. She wanted him to take the throne. But everyone else wanted Princess Allura to take the throne because she was far more capable. She had way more combat experience. She was very strategic. She was very smart. And let's just say the son was not a chip off the old block. He showed no leadership potential whatsoever. This caused Lady Genevieve to hire a group of assassins to attempt to assassinate her stepdaughter, which failed miserably, which caused Lord Cardine to fly into a rage, dragging her by her hair down to the main square and shackling her to a post and beginning to interrogate her. slapping her around, being very aggressive. I mean, she did just try to have his daughter killed. For political reasons, mind you. And she's just laughing in his face. And just as Lord Cardine draws one of his blades to end her life himself, she is also hit directly in the eyeball, in one side, out the back of her head, of a obsidian-tipped, black-shafted arrow, fletched with black raven's feathers, with a note attached to the backside of the arrow. Her head goes limp, and the crowd gasps. Lord Cardine takes the note, crumples it up, and throws it on the ground. Our party, being ever so inquisitive, decides to pick up the note, and all it reads is, "Your contract has been terminated." And it is stamped with black wax with the insignia of a viper bearing its fangs. And that, I think, is where we're going to leave off right here. That's not where we're at in the campaign, but this has gone on for about an hour. So, it's a little disjointed, so I might have to cut this down and re-upload it. But that is definitely not where the campaign is. But I figured I needed to just go ahead and get in front of the camera and get us up to a certain point. When I do these in the future, I'm going to attempt to be a little bit more concise. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this recap. We'll get to the following sessions on the next episode. I'll let you guys know when we're at the current session. It'll be easier when we get to the current session, because all I'll have to do is, after the session's over, come in here, sit in front of the camera, and give a recap. And it'll be much more fresh on my mind then. But yeah, so up to this point, yeah, it'll be easier the closer we get. Yeah, it will. It's just tough right now, just because I'm having to recall, and I'm missing a bunch of details that made the sessions even more fun. Like, I know I skipped over the whole switcheroo from the guard whenever Soseki was imprisoned back in Oryx. I know I skipped over all that stuff. But like I said, it's a lot to go through. Sometimes a lot happens and a lot of nothing happens in these sessions, so. But yeah, so up to this point, the party have met. They have busted up a drug distribution center. I say center, but like, they found a merchant who is supplying a certain type of drug or poison to this group of assassins. They uncover a plot to assassinate a member of royalty. They head to the main city, take part in some of the festivities, foil the assassination attempt, and are unfortunately out of luck when it comes to finding out who this mysterious group of assassins is. But that's where we'll pick up on the campaign recap next time. But it's gone on for about an hour, so I'm thirsty and I'm tired. So we'll pick up next time. But hey, Jay, Devin, I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out. I might take this down off YouTube, edit it, and re-upload it to where it makes more sense and it's not an hour long. So, well, I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out. And I guess I'll see you guys next time.